side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Boring. Boring. Boring.
You got it work. Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. That's exactly what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Oh, that Keir Starmer, he is a wag. You'd like to think he does it on purpose, but I fear he does not. He's an accidental comedian, unlike Vladimir Zelensky, who was a comedian on purpose. That's his career. His side hustle is politics, and that's what we're going to discuss today. Welcome to Lembit Öpik Live here on Unprecedented TV, where we find the facts, kill the spin, and tell it like it is as best we can. We do our best to research the information, but we also add our opinions. We don't mix the two things up. You'll know when it's my point of view, and I don't expect you to necessarily share it. But that's what makes these shows, hopefully, quite interesting, because we think for ourselves. And my one request is you think for yourself, too. That's the point of Unprecedented TV. I do watch the mainstream so that you don't have to. And I don't want to beat the mainstream. I want us to be the mainstream. And thank you so much for subscribing in advance, if you haven't already, at Unprecedented TV on YouTube. Quickest way to find us is put Unprecedented TV in the system and then put my name, Lembit, L-E-M-B-I-T. You'll get straight there. Just subscribe, take you 20 seconds, and then you'll be informed whenever we do stuff here on the station. We've got loads and loads of presenters, 16 in fact, actually, and bringing some more programs on stream as well. So please subscribe, Unprecedented TV on YouTube. And you can follow me on X as well, at Lembit Öpik. Now, subject for today is the continuing slaughter in Ukraine. I'll make no bones about it. I've been very disturbed by the numbers and the fact that I think we're being lied to. I believe that the death toll for Ukraine is far higher than we've been told. Inside sources suggest that Ukraine is losing orders of magnitude more troops than Russia. Making it even worse is the fact that Ukraine has roughly a quarter of the population of Russia. So orders of magnitude more deaths from a much smaller population. That's going to cause trouble socially, economically, maybe even politically in Ukraine. But what's the point of this? Is there any chance that Ukraine can actually win? Keir Starmer thinks so. So do various, in my view, fourth-rate politicians across Europe. But really, is that possible? Can little Ukraine, with its very limited entourage of part-time political supporters, mainly from around Europe and the UK, really take on the might of the bear, of Russia, of Vladimir Putin and defeat them? I've been skeptical about that for a long time. I wonder if perhaps I'm just being unnecessarily cynical. Maybe I've missed something. Perhaps there's something about the way Ukraine fights. Perhaps their professionalism, their vast resources. Perhaps because they know the lay of the land. And remember, they're exclusively fighting on their own territory, mainly moving backwards. Perhaps those are advantages that I haven't taken into account. And Ukraine can turn it round and repel the invaders as they see them. Or perhaps I'm right. And the killing fields of Ukraine are exactly that. Not just killing people, but killing any hope of a recovery of that land without pretty close to an unconditional surrender on the terms that Russia has publicly clearly set. Their 3 terms. I'll talk about them on the show today. You can have your say. Tell me on X what you think. And also, please do feel free to get in touch and disagree with me if you want. We are here for free speech. I trust your intelligence and intellectual integrity to make these decisions for yourselves. Somebody else who I trust very much is my guest, as we often have at this time of the week. That's Warren Thornton, investigative journalist. Warren, good to see you. What are you smirking about?
I was just enjoying your rather caustic and very, very amusing intro to the Ukraine-Russia war, which, of course, we all know they've got absolutely no chance of winning whatsoever. And in fact, we got the figures that just come in about what happened just this week, Lembit. And of course, Pokrovsk in the last 24 hours has shown to be some of quite the most hideous, shall we say, photographs and pictures that I've seen. And of course, we've had mercenaries who have been fighting right there, telling us exactly what's been going on.
Well, that's all we've got time for. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I want to go into that. I'm laughing, but it's not a laughing matter. These people are dying. And I have to say, and I have to tell my viewers, that you have heavily influenced my understanding of the situation. Just remind those who may not be familiar with your background what you've done.
I'm an ex-military sniper for 6 years, and then of course I spent 8 years in war-torn areas, being security and looking after aid workers in war-torn regions. So shall I say, I've seen my fair share of people who've battled. I've seen my fair share too of propaganda on both sides, and not only from the West but also from the other side as well. So very much over those years, of course, we've got to know military workers, aid workers who have now risen through the ranks. We've got to know embassy staff, and of course, we've got to know, shall we say, spooks who like to hang about and call themselves embassy attaches, but are nothing of the sort.
You are very well connected. I've known that and realized that, not least by having the honor of being on your shows, especially on Sunday evenings, and we replay a considerable proportion of that on weekdays. So prodigious output, then prodigious understanding. Let's start with the big picture then. A lot of people in British politics seem to be wanting to tell us that with the right support, Volodymyr Zelensky can repel Russia from its territory and win back all the ground that it has lost. What's the real situation, Warren, in your view?
Well, what kind of support? I would turn around and say, what kind of support to start with? Germany's putting up its pensions to 73 years of age. France is deferring its talk on pensions for the simple fact that they know that if they try and put the pensions in the budget, it's going to, Le Cornu's going to be in trouble. It's his second go at being there. And of course, they're trying to put the pensions up to 68 now in the UK. That's because they don't have any money. The Russian frozen assets, whatever is left of that, because I am of the opinion, and it is only an opinion, that they've already pinched a fair portion of that, and they've frozen it, pinched it, spent it. And of course, they're now trying to get their hands on that. So how are they going to give them the support exactly? Are they going to put Ukraine flags in their bio? Because they certainly don't have any money to be splashing around on weapons. But of course, Donald Trump is selling them the weapons. Of course, Donald Trump's doing very, very well. Yeah. I would like to know where they're going to get the money to pay for.
Let's start with a map of Ukraine, and in simple terms, can you explain what's going on here? We've got these four areas: Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia,
yep,
Zaporizhia, and Kherson, and of course Crimea, which has already been annexed by Russia. What's this picture telling us? I know it's a fairly big picture. It doesn't go into the details of the front, but what's going on?
Yeah, so very, very simply, in Kherson, they've just almost crossed the river to the city of Kherson itself. The Russians have done this. Now, the idea of that is that it's the first time the Russians have had a delve across the river in a long, long time. In the Zaporizhia area, the Russians are making all sorts of, shall we say, forward movements in various areas, of course. But Donetsk and Luhansk is where the main fighting is. And of course, around Donetsk, there is a place called Pokrovsk. There is certain other places like Konstantinivka. Luhansk is almost entirely in Russian hands. There's about 99%. There's about 85, 86% of Donetsk is in Russian hands. And everybody is saying that the Russians, or I should say, not everybody, but the Washington Post has put out this idea that Trump and Putin have had a speech, and Putin said we'll give up Zaporozhye and Kherson if we can keep Luhansk and Donetsk. Well, that is complete nonsense. The Russians are going to take Luhansk. They're going to take Donetsk. They're not going to give up any territory they are currently sitting on. The Russians will not be giving up. The Russians have got all the cards here, and nobody else has got any, and that includes America.
That's interesting, because I see endlessly on the ever diminishing reportage on the mainstream, but I see endlessly the same message, oh, that Ukraine can have the support of the West. We got people like Starmer redoubling his support, telling us how Europe will back them and so on. But you're telling me that none of that really is making any difference.
No, they're not going to do a thing. Very, very simply, they've given them lots of tanks, lots of weapons. Now, Britain currently has more military horses than it does tanks. That should tell you something. And of course, we're talking about paying top dollar to the American arms companies and military-industrial complex. And the Russians have more weapons; they can produce them quicker. We're hunting around in places like South Korea for 155mm shells, artillery shells, to give them to the Ukrainians. The Russians are mass producing their weapons a lot quicker, and they're a lot better weapons. And of course, they've got more men. And of course, the NATO are not going to put any troops on the ground. They keep saying, "Oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that," and they never do it. We have Mark Rutte saying, "We'll shoot planes out of the sky," and then the next thing he turns around and says, "Well, not unless they're actually threatening us." You know, and this absolute nonsense. If NATO was super strong, like he's saying they are, Lembit, they'd have been in there getting all the glory. There is no chance of the UK, America, Germany, or France putting any boots on the ground and in the state of the current conflict. And of course, they're not getting on the 29th of September. We said that there's no way that Ukraine are getting Tomahawk missiles that are going to be given to them by Trump. And it turned out to be completely correct.
I want to talk to you about that in a minute, but let's talk about two political giants, colossuses on the stage of European politics. Can you guess who those two people are?
Are they be David Lammy and Keir Starmer, or would they be Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron?
Close, but no cigar. Keir Starmer and Ursula von der Leyen, the rather ineffective politician in her own country who went on to mess around in the European Union. This isn't exactly a marriage made in heaven, considering they've done, it's a family show, they've done flipping very little to help Ukraine, and yet they talk about it all the time. And then you see all of these reports. I think actually on the show that we did recently, you even showed some of the messages about how they had a meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky and they were helping him. But I'm not impressed with these two. I don't think, just like you said, I don't think they're making any substantial difference whatever. They're just allowing Ukrainians to be killed. And we'll talk about those figures in just a minute. Is there any mileage in this relationship between Keir Starmer and Ursula von der Leyen?
No, absolutely none. No, Starmer is desperate to get us back into the EU, and von der Leyen's desperate to get all the allies she can. Ursula von der Leyen, you have to remember, I call her von deluded, because she just literally, over and over again, she comes out with these idiotic statements. She's going to give Ukraine 800 billion. Where are you exactly getting that from, Ursula, if you wouldn't mind telling us? And of course, Keir Starmer, I mean, about the only decent, shall we say, thing that Keir Starmer has done is stay out of the country as often as possible. It is quite staggering. I mean, Starmer, for instance, is saying, you know, the coalition of the willing. Well, how long did that last? People started dropping like flies inside a week, and they had to get Australians and I suppose, you know, people with blow darts from Papua New Guinea to come and help out to beef up this coalition of the willing. So these people are like, how can I put this the best way I can? You have India, which are a player because obviously, you know, their economic clout. You've got China, you've got Russia, you've got America, and the rest. NATO and the European Union are going to do exactly what America tell them, and so is Keir Starmer. I mean, this is just yapping. This is yapping chihuahuas having a go, you know, at big dogs. Let's put it that way.
Let's look at one of the people that you groups you mentioned there. The developing bloc here. There's Vladimir Putin with Modi from India and some others. It seems to me we're looking at the new world order here.
Yes,
people who obviously get on well. They don't look rabid or mad to me, but I reckon they can see that the West's empire is up because Putin is scaling his performance in Ukraine. I don't think they're anywhere near top capacity there. And if Prime Minister Modi there is buying oil from Russia and doesn't seem to have any intention of stopping doing it, it's just obvious that this new trading bloc is really powerful.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you've had Modi, who's literally, they've done it diplomatically, but they've turned around and said that we're not stopping buying Russian oil. We will do whatever's good for our country. If America decide to sell it to them cheaper than they do to Russia, then they might well buy it. But of course, we've all seen the idiotic deal that Ursula von der Leyen, somebody we've already mentioned, did with Donald Trump, where she sold Europe down the river. She's actually, and they've actually come out with this and said, we've got to stop buying Russian oil. Well, that's fine. That just means there's more Russian oil for China. There's more Russian oil for India. And of course, the Chinese are just sitting back. China, Russia, and India are already aware, because of the threats, because of the economic threats that have come against them, have already decided they are better off in bed together. Those three big countries are better off in bed together, because once somebody's been dealt with, it'll be our turn next. And of course, should we say that Trump saying some of the things that he said hasn't helped in the slightest. Every time we've got a problem with a Russia trade deal, with the Chinese trade deal, we're now in a trade war with China, then everything's going to be okay when the markets take a plummet. I'm going to get Putin to do this, and then Putin turns around and goes, our position hasn't changed, and they go, okay. And then we had Trump saying, I've convinced Modi not to buy any Russian oil, and Modi turned around and gone, I haven't spoken to him on the phone. So there is a lot of bluster and a lot of hot air, but they don't have any cards. Ukraine are losing men like there's no tomorrow, and economically, you can't threaten these three countries.
Now, I want to, after the short break, I want to talk about the numbers.
Yes.
But it seems to me that Ukraine is quite literally burning. You
Yes.
just see these pictures coming out again and again and again. And there's one, for example, where Russia seems to be absolutely pounding Ukraine. After the break, I want to ask you three questions. Number one, what's the reality on the ground in terms of the numbers, in your view? Secondly, what is Russia actually bombing? And thirdly, if they're that powerful, why haven't they flattened Ukraine? We'll cover those three things in just a minute. In the meantime, I want to say to you that I had a very good experience of talking with our show, Dire Consequences. It really is going forward with tremendous vigor. And I'm so grateful to Claire for introducing me to some true freedom fighters, some true defenders of their communities, especially against sexual molestation by illegal immigrants, for example. Claire Dyer's program, if you watch nothing else apart from this one, also watch Dire Consequences. It's a must watch in my view. James Timms, who I had the honor of interviewing recently, we might end up on that show. In fact, it was Marilyn Hawes who introduced me to him. But last week, if you're watching this live, last week we actually had a scoop with Claire, and it went viral. They didn't credit unprecedented TV, but I know you're watching mainstream because you're 3 times now taking our stories and putting them across the land, and that's great, because it means we're getting where I want to be, to lead the mainstream media. But if you've got ideas for shows, do let us know. We're always open to suggestions. Let's get back to Warren Thornton. Warren, 3 things I want to cover. First of all, what do you think is, in your view, the death toll? And I know that we covered that in some detail, and we go into much more discussion on that on the show I did with you. But if you can give a brief précis now, that would be helpful.
Okay, so a brief précis. Ukraine, including their reservists at the start of 2022, had 2.2 million. They then had mobilisations where they got another 1.4 million. That takes you up 3.6 million. They've beaten up a lot of people, thrown them into vans. That's another couple of hundred
Hang on,
thousand.
what do you mean by that? Beating up a lot of people, throw them into vans?
Basically what they call the TCC conscription. So basically what they've done is gone around in groups of people and grabbed men off the street, thrown them into vans on various occasions, done all sorts of horrible things to them, dragged them away, thrown them into vans, taken them to recruitment centres, and then put them on the front line inside 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks? Yep. 2 weeks training?
Yes, sometimes even less.
What age?
They're anywhere, well, now, because they've lost so many men, they're actually grabbing people that are over 60.
People of my age?
Yeah, and mine.
Well, you'd be probably a pretty good soldier. I don't think I'd be great at doing that, I have to say. And the number of deaths you'd say is?
Okay, so total you've got 4 million. The total amount of dead in Ukraine is 2 million, 700,000 injured. You have another 400,000 that are supposedly meant to have deserted, but they haven't. It's about 250,000 deserted, about another 100,000 in captivity, leaving you around 900,000 men at January the 1st, 2025. And they've been losing, here's your figures now for what's happening daily. So here we go, the Ukrainian figures from 4 sources. This is, so Ukraine have killed 684 Russians this week. And literally we're looking at the average of around about 500. They're saying, oh, we killed this many, 500 here, 600 there. So the average is literally 84 soldiers, anywhere between 84 to 90 Russian soldiers a day. The figures that we're getting, not just from Russia, but from Ukraine, from the Red Cross and others as well, is that they have lost this month. They have lost so many men. They've lost 32,000 men this month. Literally, once you get that down to the amount of per day, sorry, not 32,000 this month, 32,000 just this week. So you divide that 10,000.
32,000 this week.
Sorry, 32,000 was the total that we had. We divided that by 3, which is the main, shall we say, people who are giving us the figures. That gave us a figure, my apologies, 10,988 this week. Divide that by 7. They are losing 1,569 soldiers a day on average, and Russia are losing 90.
Okay, that's quite a lot of numbers. I know that you go through that in more detail and more slowly on your show. So if you want to get into those figures and see how Warren's come up with them, then watch the show. The 32,000 is adding 3 sources, and then you divide by 3. But don't worry about that. Essentially, you're saying, and you explain it very well on the program that we recorded, that Russia will lose 90 a day and Ukraine will lose about 1,700. So it's like 18 to 1, something like that.
About 1,600. The ratio for this week is 18 to 1.
It's horrendous. It really is. And it's not really sustainable, is it?
No. And over the course of the war, Lembit, it averages out over the course of the war. 2022, it was about even. Then 2023, Ukraine were losing anywhere between 8 to 12 to 1. Then they were losing 17, 18 to 1 around about 2024. And now it's well over 20.
It's just desperate. Just the amount of ruined families, homes, relationships through this. And you said 700,000 maimed.
Yes, 700,000 injured. And you're hearing lots of people turn around and say Russia have lost 1 million people. That is nonsense, because for Russia to lose 1 million people, Ukraine would have had to lose 18 million men. And Ukraine have only lost 2 million men. So divide that by 18, that gives you the number of Russian killed.
It's just a desperate situation. It's just tragic.
Yes.
That's the problem with it. It's so tragic.
It is.
Now, others may dispute it. The mainstream media that we're trying to replace, they wouldn't agree with those figures. But as I say, you go into much more detail on the other program, so let's not get too deep into the statistics.
Yep.
Fundamentally, though, that means that Ukraine's losing land and it's losing people at the same time.
Yes.
So in other words, the longer this war continues, the more Ukrainians will die and the more land
Yes.
they'll lose. That's really bad strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way for me to turn around and say it to everybody out there, Lembit, if anybody's got a problem with our figures, Ukraine in all have had 4 million men in their armed forces, including reservists. They've got, as of the 1st of January, they admitted they only had 900,000 with the army, with the navy, with the air force. Where have those 3.1 million got?
Okay, and so we've just got this endless catalogue of killing. It's so depressing. It's hard to believe, really, that it's gone on this long. I expressed an opinion. I don't think Ukraine can win. I don't think they ever could win, and I don't think there's European momentum to do it. But time's going very quickly. But let's get into the detail here. Donald Trump talking about meeting Putin. This is being filmed live in October, so you'll be able to see in the archive if you're watching this from the archive how accurate we are. Trump and Putin had that interesting meeting in Alaska, and there's been quite a lot of talk about next meetings and so forth. But Viktor Orban, now he's an important character. Tell us about him.
Well, basically what happened was before they wanted to give tomahawks, Zelensky was going over asking for tomahawks again and again and again, and they were never going to get them.
Tomahawks are missiles from America.
These are long-range ballistic missiles, and very simply, they were asking for these Tomahawk missiles. We said they were never going to get them. Right? Literally, America are not going to let Zelensky and his cohorts loose with a bunch of long-range missiles. This is simply not going to happen. And of course, they wanted to get hold of, literally wanted to get hold of Putin because Trump had been saying some rather silly things. And for 3 days, they were trying to get a phone call through back channels to speak to Putin. Eventually, they got hold of Orban. Orban spoke to Putin.
That's him in the picture there. He runs Hungary.
He does, yeah. Viktor Orban is probably the most central character in this, and probably the biggest winner in this, because of course he is a very, very decent guy, and of course he's miles ahead of anybody that they've got in the European Union. So they went through him to broker this meeting in Hungary, and of course, the whole of the EU are having a meltdown because the EU don't like Hungary very much because they're not warmongers. So very, very simply, Orban's turned out to be the winner, Lembit.
Yeah, it looks like it. And there's all kinds of small technical things about whether he'll be arrested for going there or not. But Trump and Orban and Putin seem to be a good alliance. We talked about Erdogan in Turkey. Orban seems to be the negotiator. He seems to be the go-between.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. And that's for people turning around and saying, you know, people are worried that, if he flies to Hungary, there's going to be a problem. America will turn around and tell the rest of Europe, do not touch his plane in any way, shape or form. Because if you do, you don't get Putin, who is seen as a moderate. You get Medvedev. And if you get Medvedev, then you've got a real problem on your hands because he will want to sort it out. So the EU will bark and they'll yap, Lembit, but they won't do a damn thing to Putin's plane. They'll leave it be. All this ICC arrest warrant and everything, it is being shown up for the nonsense it is. Nobody is going to touch Putin's plane.
Some people say now that there's all this talk about large amount of deaths and this talk about negotiating with Putin puts you in the camp of being a Russia supporter. Now, that may or may not be the case, but there's this we found. Russian hackers claim database breach alleged 1.7 million Ukrainian casualties. That tends to back up the kind of figures you're talking about. Mm-hmm. What would you say to those who say, well, you're just representing Russian propaganda?
It's not right representing Russian propaganda. I want to stop them killing Ukrainians because it's good, decent Ukrainians that are getting killed here. Propaganda, at the end of the day, propaganda is when you turn around and you say Ukraine can win, Russia's economy is in the toilet and things like that. Well, currently, Russia's GDP growth is better than anybody in Europe, and currently, Russia are sitting on 20% of Ukraine's land. Now, does that sound to you like someone who's losing?
No, it's quite obvious. I think, well, you know my view, even the most hard-bitten supporter of Ukraine, even the kind of person who put a Ukrainian flag on top of Downing Street can't seriously think that Ukraine is having a good war. Which leads me, of course, to asking you about the influence of Keir Starmer. He didn't have a very good experience in Sharm el-Sheikh when he flew over for a 60-second photo opportunity and then messed it up.
Yeah, one of those, where is the UK? Oh, you're over there. Okay, go back over there and keep quiet. That was basically
I think we might even have that, actually. But yeah, here it comes now. Where's United Kingdom? Where's United Kingdom? So he comes up, he glances at the microphone, thinking he's going to be given a chance to speak. And instead he just gets this. But Trump turns his back. And then you've got the schoolboy Walker shamed back to where he was standing before. Look at that face. Look at that face. It said it all.
Looks like he's sucking on a lemon, doesn't it? And I don't know whether you caught Maloney's expression there. It was absolutely priceless. She is the queen of these brilliant faces that she calls. She's there for Trump. She gets on really, really well with Orban. She has no time for the rest of the EU leaders whatsoever. You can see it written on her face whenever any of them approach her.
Yeah, it is funny. It really is. So we haven't really got much credibility. Starmer, I think it's fair to say, is irrelevant. As for his deputy prime minister, I don't know how fair this is, but apparently he was having a nice lunch when Iran was bombed by America, and somebody, I think they put something up about it. I mean, I think that picture of can you just put that up again, please, if we can have that? Yeah, here we got Starmer, so obviously sidelined, and the question is really whether there's anybody else who can make a piece of an inroad here, but I just don't think it is the case that anyone else can. I mean, I have to say, this incident that we're just looking at there. Can we just play it again? I just want to watch this again. Yeah, there it is. The awkward moment with Donald Trump. Yeah. He's waving. Here I am, sir.
Have a look at Maloney's face when he gets ushered back.
Oh, you can't quite see her there in that one.
Yeah, you can. Now.
Oh, yeah, you can. You can. You're right. Oh dear. Oh, that's a big fail. That is. But we've got this fantastic deputy prime minister, former foreign minister. Let me off the clock as bombs drop. I'm not sure if that's true. I think that's an artist impression there, of Lammy tucking into some food, uncharacteristic of him. We don't really have anyone who's been taken seriously, do we, in the United Kingdom?
No, absolutely not. Probably the only people who'd be taken seriously in the United Kingdom if they went over to China or Russia would be yourself or George Galloway, Lembit. It really is. I mean, all the politicians who are half decent, none of them will go anywhere near. Nobody will go anywhere near the British politicians because we've got no gravitas. We've got no wedge in the game whatsoever. We do exactly, we're going to go along with the EU. We're not going to get out of step there. The Americans and the Russians, the Americans, of course, they antagonize Russia into invading Ukraine. Let's be absolutely clear about that. And they are the ones who kept funding this war through Victoria Nuland and the National Endowment for Democracy. As you know, they tried to sort of colour revolution in Georgia a couple of weeks back. It didn't work. And we've got this absolute idiot. I mean, turning up to say, we're going to do this in Gaza and everything else. In Ukraine, he has just signed a 100-year deal to give Ukraine 3 or 4 billion every single year for the next 100 years. You cannot take this guy seriously. So Trump is going to go over. He's talking all sorts of deals to do, shall we say, with economics. Putin is still talking about the 3 main things that they need. They're all going to be talking at cross purposes. And of course, nothing's going to get done. And then Trump's going to go off the deep end after the meeting with Putin. He's going to go off the deep end and tell Zelensky that he can have tomahawks, but he can only aim them at certain places. That's coming up in the next 6 months.
Okay, so we've covered 2 of the 3 things. One is the death numbers, which you're saying is around 2 million. Obviously a disputed figure, but I find it persuasive personally. I'll leave viewers to decide for themselves. Secondly, we've established unequivocally, but at least for you and me, that Ukraine can't actually win militarily. No. At least the final area, really, what is to be done? Do you think that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and Viktor Orban, are they going to be able to settle this?
This is the last chance saloon for both of them. First of all, it's the last chance for Trump to stop them, because remember, they wanted Russia busy, but they didn't want this runaway train. They didn't think that Russia would be this successful. And now it's a runaway caboose that they can't stop. So they need to put the brakes on, and they need to put the brakes on hard. Otherwise, it's going to be, as I've always said, the 8 Oblast, which, as you can see there, you've got Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk in the hand. They will have Sumy, which will be up near Luhansk and Donetsk. They will, of course, have Mykolaiv, and they will have the other ones that are very, very close to Odessa. They will have Odessa, and in the end, they'll have these 8 oblasts. So they'll have Crimea, they'll have 7 in the eastern region of Ukraine, and then they will have Odessa, which is that little bit you can see down the bottom left-hand corner in yellow there. That is Odessa. So that's what the Russians will take, unless the Americans stop messing around, stop trying to get out with a draw. They've lost this war. They've got to cut a deal. It's just how much they're willing to give. And at the moment, the Americans are trying to play peacemaker, but they're the ones who can end the war. They can get rid of Zelensky, and they can put somebody else in who will just say, right, we'll give you this. Will you stop? Because at the end of the day, Russia hold all the cards.
It does seem to me there are only 2 real outcomes here. Russia gets what it wants peacefully, or gets what it wants violently.
Yes, that's it. Lembit, you couldn't have summed that up better.
Well, that's important to me coming from you, because you do follow this very closely. Final question for you, Warren: If Volodymyr Zelensky continues insisting on fighting, how much power does he really have to do that? You said
they'll keep funding him. They'll keep funding him, but as you can see, they give him a little weapons package to go away with, and he walks away with this hot little number in his hand. You're not having Tommy Hawks just yet. Okay, Mr. President. Off he'll go, and he'll keep throwing these people under the bus. We will still be talking about this in August in 2026, Lembit.
Yeah, because he's been making a special effort to get on with Donald Trump now.
Yes.
Trump isn't a fool. He can shake hands, but it doesn't mean he has a better opinion. We know from Trump's fairly candid commentary about everyone from British politicians through to Zelensky that he reckons he's calling the shots. I mean, let's face it, this is not for now, but he seems to be the only person who can tell Netanyahu what to do as well. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Here's the thing, Lembit. Back in 2023, people turned around and said, do you give the war 6 months or whatever? I said, we'll still be fighting in 2025. There'll still be a war going on there. And people called me crazy at the time.
You were right about that. I was wrong. Okay, happy now?
No, I mean, I'm talking way back in January 2023.
Oh, well, yeah.
I was saying we'll still be fighting in 2025. And they went, no. And believe me when I tell you, Lembit, the time when it starts to get very tricky is August 2026, because Ukraine are then down to so low in the numbers, NATO and America must make a choice to walk away from the war and settle a peace deal, or to go all in. And they've got a choice. August 2026 is make or break, because the numbers that they're losing every day shows that Ukraine, round about August 2026, are at literally the tipping crisis point there.
That sounds really scary, the way you say that. Warren, where can we get more? I'll just say that if you're watching this live, then later on, you'll see Warren Thornton's War Report today, where he goes into those figures a lot more detail. But where can we get another dose of Warren Thornton?
Well, we have the warrenthornton.com. You can see us on X and also on our Patreon. Just type in Warren Thornton. Go to Patreon, type in Warren Thornton. You can find us on X as well, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. at night, British Summertime or BST, till 8 p.m. And, of course, on Sunday night, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. with the wonderful Lembit Öpik from Unprecedented TV. And you can catch our first half of our show on his wonderful TV station, Unprecedented TV.
Thank you. It's it's a great interaction we have, and I'm very grateful for your views. Doesn't mean everyone's going to agree, of course, but that's Warren Thornton. Warren and I don't always agree either, but this is the whole point about free speech. You make your decision. Do you think Zelensky can win? Tell us in the X. And also, don't forget to catch up with warrenthornton.com. 6 till 8 British summertime. So that's 5 till 7 Greenwich Mean Time. And as Warren says, I'm there on Sundays as well. Well, that's it from me for today here on this show. Do keep tabs on everything else. We've got some great Live and Let Die shows coming up with Mark Oaten as well, and a whole bunch of other stuff too. And don't forget Claire Dyer's Dire Consequences, superb heavy duty information. I'm Lembit Öpik. That was Lembit Öpik Live here on Unprecedented TV. Have a better day than Zelensky's having.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The return of the sausages.